Okay, everyone, so it's 5 past, so let's go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for turning up today. This is End the Virus of Racism's first community conversation. It will be the first of two, and there's another one tomorrow night. So these community conversations will feed into the work of the London Recovery Board, which is led by the Mayor's Office in London. So that is the work of rebuilding London after COVID, and these community conversations about feeding into the direction of that work. What we have noted in the course of our conversations with the Mayor of London, the Deputy Mayor of London as well, we've had a meeting with Debbie Weeks-Bernard, and we followed up with the community engagement team because we noticed that there's a total lack of East and Southeast Asian voices in the conversation. And so it's really important that we feed in as a community and that we keep on pushing for more representation, for better representation. And this is just in the course of among the things that we will hope to achieve. Just to introduce myself quickly, so my name is Hao Yu. I use she, her pronouns, and I am one of the core co-organisers of End the Virus of Racism. We will talk a little bit more about what EVR is, what we do, how we came together in a moment. But I just wanted to start off with some ground rules. So first of all, this is a safe space, this is a respectful space, so we won't have any hate speech or bullying in this discussion, and in line with that, please respect confidentiality and anonymity. So what's discussed in this space, especially if it's of a personal nature, should stay in the group. And as well as that, we will be, you will see we're recording this event too. So if there's at any point at which you want to say something, but you don't want to be on the record, please let Jacqueline, Mariko, or myself know on the chat, and we can stop recording while you speak. Yes, and protocol as well. Feel free to we will need to mute you all and raise hands if you want to speak, and we may have to cut you off if you talk for too long as well. And if you need something repeating or you want to refer back to something, please let us know. And also we want to hear from everyone, so we might sort of ask people who haven't spoken to speak. And last thing is that if you need to leave, feel free to, and if you want to rejoin, we can let you back in as well. So just some ground rules there. And now we can go on to talking about what EVR are. So End the Virus of Racism is a mutual aid group of activists, students, researchers, professionals, artists who came together in May, and we came together following the news that hate crimes against Chinese and other Asian other people have risen threefold over the course of the early part of the year. There's been statistics showing that this trend has continued as well. So what we've been doing is, we're an anti-racist organisation, and we're campaigning against structural racism against East and Southeast Asian people in the UK. And to that end, we're crowdfunding. We're crowdfunding to build the UK's first non-profit that will tackle systemic anti-East and Southeast Asian racisms. We are also supporting the campaign of We Are Not a Virus, to call upon the government and the media to not use images of Asians in the coronavirus related media, because that is stigmatizing. And I think you'll find out more of our events if you go onto our website, endthevirusofracism.com. I'll leave it to Jacqueline to talk about our social media and hashtags and stuff that you can follow. But yeah, welcome everybody.
Hi there, my name is Jacqueline. I was born in the Philippines and then moved to Scotland when I was 13. I'm half Filipino, half Scottish, and I'm one of the core organizers of End the Virus of Racism, and I've been leading on the social media pages that we have on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So anything, if you've been engaging with anything that I've posted on there, then that's been me behind the scenes. But it's been really great to grow our social media presence and engage with so many people and discover so many British, East and Southeast Asian voices through social media. And yeah, if you follow us on social media, we are End Racism Virus, and we use the hashtag End Racism Virus, as well as we have been supporting other petitions like We Are Not a Virus as well. So if you do want to share or publicize anything that we've been posting about us or our community conversations that we're hosting tonight, then please do use these hashtags. And now I'm going to pass it on to Mariko to talk a little bit more about the Southeast and East Asian Center.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and hi everybody. My name is Mariko, and I'm here representing Southeast and East Asian Center. We are supporting this EVR conversation today. So a little bit about myself. I'm Japanese. I've been living in the UK on and off about 8 years, and then I'm now one of the directors at Southeast and East Asian Center, which is a quite new organization. So some of you might not have heard of us yet, but it was established and registered formally in January 2020 this year. We are aiming to, we have been working with migrant communities mainly, but also wider communities of East and Southeast Asian people in the UK. So since the beginning of lockdown, we've been engaging as an organization, as also as individual myself with EVR Group, and we have been working together since then. And yeah, so this conversation also we hosted together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mariko, and thank you, Jacqueline. So over the course of the event, as well, we will also be asking about people's experiences of hate crime and racism, because that is a key part of what informs our advocacy and what informs our projects. So that will be threaded through the discussion. And yeah, if there's any questions, please raise your hand now, or we can get started with the mission. Okay, right. Oh, I should introduce myself as well, just really quickly, and I'll ask you guys to introduce yourselves really quickly when you speak for the first time too. So I'm a community organizer and writer, and I'm working in local government at the moment, and yeah, so that's about me. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. So if Mariko and Jacqueline, you can let me know.
Yeah, that looks good.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is quite wordy, so I'm just going to read it out, but feel free to mute me and just read it through in your own kind of time. So this is the mission that we are sort of going through, and we're going to unpack and figure out if there's anything that's missing, or bring out what's especially important to our communities in this mission. So the mission is good work for all Londoners. So I'm just going to read it out. Unemployment is rising steeply in London, with 1.1 million jobs at risk. London had 1.07 million furloughed employees and 433,000 on the self-employed equivalent, the highest number amongst all regions in the UK. Some groups of people are especially vulnerable, including young people, BAME, clinically vulnerable, women, and the low-paid and low-skilled. For these groups, the risk is that prolonged employment could lead to long-term implications for their future earnings, employment prospects, and their health and well-being. Structural challenges in society predating the COVID-19 crisis remain and need to be addressed, including income inequality. For example, once housing costs have been accounted for, London's income inequality is almost twice that of the rest of the UK. And the mission is that no Londoner, particularly those disproportionately affected by the pandemic or Brexit, is left without access to education, training, or a job opportunity. So we'll need to work together so that in the short term, all Londoners can access the support that they need to gain good jobs. In the medium term, rising levels of unemployment should be reversed over the next 2 years, and that in the long term, more working families are lifted out of poverty, that the employment gap for vulnerable groups of people is reduced, and so that there are sufficient childcare places to support women in work. So suggested areas of focus might include skills and training to support Londoners into new jobs, such as industry training and lifelong learning opportunities. Another one might be high quality advice and support to get Londoners into work, such as support for newly unemployed adults. And thirdly, another area of focus might be supporting living wage jobs and progression in employment. So are there any sort of questions, any sort of initial thoughts about this mission? What are people thinking already?
We have a question from Eleanor about the definition of clinically vulnerable. And just to explain, it's categorized on the NHS website as people who are at moderate risk of coronavirus. So those are people over the age of 70 and people with pre-existing health conditions that would make them particularly susceptible to be affected by coronavirus.
So thank you for that, Jacqueline. So yeah, just going to open the floor to initial thoughts, and the question is basically, what do you all think of this mission?
Can I come in here?
Go for
Sorry,
it.
hi, this is James from the Hackney Chinese Community Services. I think one of the disproportionate effect is that Chinese and the East and Southeast Asian
Jabez? Can anybody hear him, or has he cut out?
I'm afraid I think he's cut out.
Okay, maybe we can come back to him later. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? For example, you might want to talk about experiences of unemployment, or issues that you personally know about, have been working on.
Can I add something?
Yes.
I just noticed when you mentioned the clinically vulnerable, I was just noticed there's no mention of disabled people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I will also add one thing on this, particularly on this mission, is that I don't know why they specific. I mean, I understand that there's specific mention on Brexit, but I think there has been a lot more a lot of people who has been vulnerable because of the immigration policies that already existed before Brexit. So I think that's kind of a bit missing out in here.
Okay.
I've got a couple of points. It's Daniel Fujiwara from.
Hi, Daniel.
I'm from the LSE, and I also run a company called Symmetrica Jacobs, and I specialise in wellbeing analysis. But I think my couple of points in relation specifically to kind of East and Southeast Asians is that there's a lot of diverse experiences. So the experience of a Filipino person or Vietnamese person is very different to a Korean or Japanese or Chinese person, for example, I think in the labour market. So some of these things will apply to certain groups and not to others. So I think it's quite varied there. And one thing from my particular research about my own experience is really about the progression in employment. I think that's a massive issue for East Asian, Southeast Asian people. So we talk quite a lot about this issue known as bamboo ceiling. I'm not sure if you've come across that, but you know, we tend to be as a group very highly qualified, but you know, very rarely in senior management positions. It's quite hard to have that career progression. So I think that progression and support in employment is a really key one, as well as kind of, you know, the other side of finding jobs as well.
Thank you, Daniel. That's a really good point, and it's exemplified by the massive underrepresentation in government and in decision-making structures, which is why events like this are happening. Actually, we applied for an access grant in order to be able to do this, and we were awarded about 60% about what we applied for, which is 300 and something pounds. So there's a lot of work to be done, and yeah, you make a good point about the barriers to accessing decision-making structures.
I think so, yeah. And I think just following up on that, it's prevalent everywhere, really. It's not just in business, right? Like I can't think of a single person of East Asian descent that's been named in like the Queen's Award who has an MBE or CB. You know, it's very difficult. You know, sports, in media, in show business, it's almost impossible to find people. And there's been some interesting research by YouGov recently that has asked people of different ethnic minorities in the UK about how fairly they've been represented in these different areas, so political life, media, sports, film, etc. And East Asians were the group that were least satisfied with representation. So broadly, I think people of Black origin and also kind of South Asian origin felt that they were more represented than East and Southeast Asians. So I think it's a massive problem, not just in business, but across everywhere, like you say.
So this is Leanne from Yellow Earth Theatre. I just wanted to add in from, I think Mariko touched on it, where it's not just Brexit or the pandemic, but talking about visas and so forth. Like, I came into conversation with people who, with the self-employment scheme, weren't able to access it because their visas wouldn't allow financial support of any means. So it's just that feeling of, you know, talking about people who've emigrated here or have migrated here and so forth, they're often out of these conversations as well.
Thank you very much, Leanne. I just wanted to also add specifically on undocumented people, because we know that within our communities, we have sadly had people who died because they're just scared of going to seeking access to NHS and that. So yeah, thank you very much for that. And I can also see that there's Joy, raised hand. If you want to just unmute yourself and come in.
Hiya, just a couple of points, and they may sound minor, but I find that they do add to the misrepresentation and underrepresentation of the East and Southeast Asian community on, say, for example, statistic forms. So if we're talking about employment and going to fill in an equality and diversity form in an employer, rarely or probably never do you ever see any representation of East or Southeast Asian members of the community apart from Chinese. So it erases the presence of Filipino staff, Vietnamese staff, Indonesian, Malay, Cambodian, and it's got a knock-on effect, because at the end of the day, when you want to find the actual figures for how the East and Southeast Asian community are discriminated against, the closest that we have is other, and that means absolutely nothing, because it doesn't really specify whether the problems that we faced are towards the East and Southeast Asian community. So therefore the figures aren't there in the first place. also, in terms of the employment situation because of coronavirus racism, I'm thinking that getting back into employment for if you're a Southeast or East Asian person, it may feel quite uncomfortable because of the racism that our communities are facing now, and whether it will affect our job prospects and how the higher authorities can actually assess and do something about it. What can be done about it, really? So those are just a few points and questions I'd like to raise.
Hi, I'd also like to add on what Joyce mentioned about the communities being worried about going back into the workforce, and what the authorities can do about it, because I think in society our communities are seen as passive, and I think authorities don't feel as inclined to help us because they don't think that we will cause such an uproar if our needs aren't met. And I think it's really important to address this misconception that everyone in our community is passive and accepting, and I think that stereotype needs to be broken.
Hi, I just thought I'd piggyback off what I think Joyce said earlier about sort of the over-representation of Chinese people compared to other races. I think this is other ethnicities. I think it's a really huge problem too. And like it's really important that we should start like pushing the BC label to encompass British, East and Southeast Asians. It'll also help boost solidarity, which I think at times like these, when our community is facing like quite imminent crisis, is like very, very important. Also, I feel like we do need to have more of an intersectional approach when it comes to these things. Like for example, sort of like Asian, like members of the LGBT community, particularly transgender people, can be very, very at risk and vulnerable. Like particularly when it comes to both employment and sort of like abuse in sort of like the wider world. So I feel like that's another aspect that could maybe be addressed. Yeah.
Just to add on to that, thank you for that point, that EVR tries to and strives to organise in an intersectional way. So we're an intergenerational group. We our mission and our way is anti-racism, but we're also learning a lot from each other. So we're a very diverse group. So there's often a lot of debates about kind of what terms do we use? Do we use the term British, East and Southeast Asian, or do we use terms like East and Southeast Asian? Because there's complicated relationships with the identity and the moniker of Britishness, and not everyone wants to identify as British. So it's a definitely interesting ongoing conversation that we're having, but we're always open to learn more. So yeah, definitely do message us. But that's intersectionality is our aim. I just wanted to say.
Thank you. It's really good to hear. Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, it's this is everyone's making some fantastic points. The bamboo ceiling, talking about representation and everything is so important. I mean, I have a personal story that's very relevant for this. 2 days into lockdown, I was let go, and that was because I had a conversation with I was a senior person in my business. In the business I was working in, and I spoke to another senior person who was a white lady who was in charge of marketing, and I told her that we as a company should do more about diversity. She didn't really understand what I was talking about, and she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, we've done lots of events around gender, which is very important and very worthwhile, and I'm glad we're doing it, but we haven't done anything about ethnicity." And she said, "What do you mean?" Like, she still didn't get it. And then I said, "Well, we're not doing anything talking about the issues of people of color." And she said, "But we've got a senior guy over here who's Indian." And I said, "That's great. That's not what I'm talking about at all." And then she just didn't really understand what I was talking about. So we started having a conversation about diversity. I was trying to educate her, and I used terms like coconut and token, so that she could understand words that we all understand, and we all kind of would maybe mention in our own conversations. A week later, I had a message saying that someone's made a complaint about me. So this lady had basically made a complaint to other senior members of staff. And so the result was I had a disciplinary hearing because a person of color was telling a white person that they should be looking to do more about, or telling the company we should do more about diversity. And in trying to explain diversity, offended that white person. And so that white person's offense was more important than the actual lack of diversity that we were talking about. And it was unbelievable. I mean, I got to bring a representative along, and the representative I brought was the black guy that I called a token. He actually calls himself a token because of the way he's treated within the business. And yeah, it was just a ridiculous situation. Obviously, that company put up a black square during the BLM protests and everything, so it was all very confusing. But what there wasn't and what there isn't is enough support for, so we should really kind of stress the support for people within businesses to on how they can tackle this conversation within the businesses, because what I am hoping BLM has as a knock-on effect is certain white people within organizations kind of just take it seriously when a person of color mentions or talks about issues they feel are happening, especially if that person isn't black, because it's very obvious and they understand how racism works for black people. They don't necessarily understand how racism works for people like us or East and Southeast Asian, especially as, you know, they like, a lot of companies like their colored staff to just be quiet and smile and turn up to events. But when you say something, it doesn't go down very well. So I'd like to add that we should probably support in helping people with that conversation, but also helping people approach that bamboo ceiling that was mentioned earlier on, which is a great term. Thanks.
Yeah, can I say something off that? Adrian, that's really shocking, but I'm not really surprised, really, given my experience, how you've been treated and stuff. The big thing I find is I think kind of white, for a better term, kind of white senior management staff find it very problematic when an East or Southeast Asian person comes to them with an issue around discrimination or diversity, because I think they're quite shocked that it's an issue for us, and they don't know how to handle it. So I've raised it twice in 2 large companies I've worked for before. The first reaction was basically, go away, you're Japanese, there's surely no reason why you're discriminated against. So that was the first one. The second one was, we'll get back to you, and I didn't ever hear back from them, and I had quite a serious complaint. So I think it's very difficult, and not having an East Asian or Southeast Asian person in a senior ranking position to go and speak to as well just makes it all the worse. So it's kind of this vicious circle. You know, there's this bamboo ceiling that you're not getting any penetration in the first place, and because you don't have that representation at senior levels, it's almost impossible to make a complaint or have a complaint taken seriously. So I can see exactly, it's a really sad story for Adrian, but I can see, you know, exactly why that's happened, and I think it's quite common in the UK and places like the US as well.
Yeah, definitely, but I don't want it to sound like it's a stub story or anything. It's been one of the best things that's happened to me. I've co-founded a few companies, advising a few other startups, and I've got a few contracts on the go. So it was actually one of the best things to happen to me. But it's just unfortunate, the kind of situation that led to me doing what I actually wanted to do. So it's a happy story, everyone. So don't think it's too sad. Cheers.
And you're part of EVR, Adrian.
Yeah, exactly. So helping others is something that I enjoy. I've been doing it for 30 years, helping other people. So helping others kind of find their voice and gain their confidence is the best contribution I can give to EVR. And we've seen it already with the different people getting involved, and what's happened out of it is amazing. So, I mean, this is a prime example of the difference that can be made just from a few people having a conversation. So well done, keep it up.
I wanted to say something similar that to Adrian's story that happened to me actually just before lockdown. So I don't think I introduced myself before. I'm Becky, and I'm half Korean, half English. And my kind of side hustle, I guess you can say, is being a Korean food blogger, but my full-time job is a primary school teacher, which is within a huge estate in London. So the majority of children that attend our school aren't white. I'd probably say the white children are actually the minority. And when I started at the school, I noticed that the books we were using were not representative of the children that attend our school. And when I brought this up to management, they just said that these are the books we've always used, it's in the national curriculum, and nothing was thought of it. And actually, it wasn't until the unfortunate death of George Floyd and the huge rise in BLM, where schools were almost forced to take an approach on what their curriculum, what is within their curriculum, that they only then started to look at our curriculum and are we being representative of female protagonists, children that have disabilities in books, as well as people of colour in books. But I just think it's quite sad, like what Adrian said with his company putting a black box on Instagram, that it has to take a huge, unfortunate event for any change to happen, when this change should have happened such a long time ago.
Thank you for that. Is it Becky?
Yeah, Becky, yeah.
That contribution. Just wanted to say that we're doing good for time, but just to let everyone know that people are in the queue to speak and they're raising hands. So please do, if you want to speak, raise your hand and Jacqueline will call on you to speak.
Sorry, I'll do that next time, sorry.
May we have Mi-Ling, please, to speak?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Mi-Ling. I was in the 80s and 90s, I was the first British Chinese woman elected Labour councillor for the London Borough of Lewisham for 16 years, and I was deputy leader for 4 years. I'm now retired. I sit on a number of public sector boards, including Transport for London, which is chaired by Sadiq Khan. I also sit on the board of a university and a FE college. I'd just like to make a couple of points. I mean, if this is about looking at London, making an economic recovery, after the pandemic, and also making sure that work and opportunity for work and employment does not disproportionately affect our BAME community. First of all, we need to understand, in terms of East Asians and Southeast Asians, which sectors, do we work in? I know we work in across all sectors, but there are some sectors like the catering industry, which is, predominantly large employers of our members of the community. So we need to understand where our communities are in the different sectors of London and how they are affected by impending redundancies or unemployment, first of all. So I think we need to also work very closely with organizations who have that data and make sure we reach out to those people. We know the recent case of British Airways redundancy where BAME employees were disproportionately affected. So it's very important to form alliances with trade unions to make sure that that doesn't happen to our communities. I think the second, in terms of recovering, is when people do get made redundant, obviously there'll be talk about career change, retraining, access to continuing education, and we need to make sure that people are aware of where these opportunities are and make sure that we put out information to make sure that they actually get hold of these advice and opportunities. I think finally, in terms of the young members of our communities, any government initiative that was announced like today, the Kickstart program for young people who are at risk of long-term unemployment, we need to make sure that these programs are specifically targeted to our communities as well. So those are very practical points I want to make, and make sure that how your organization and your campaign, how we can actually make sure that we reach out to members of our community, one, who are vulnerable in terms of losing their jobs, and two, we also need to make sure that they access the opportunities to make sure that when we rebuild London and we return London to a dynamic city with full or near employment, that we make sure that our communities do access those new jobs. I think the issue is very important of what kind of jobs do we want to see London actually create. And obviously we need to make sure that in the new exciting jobs in the tech industry, in the green industries are really, really important. We do not want people to return to low pay, low wage, low skill jobs. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mei Ling. And it's great to finally meet you, and incredible experience that you have. So I just wanted to kind of jump in there because you made some great points. We do have some, we do have contact with people who are working with the Filipino Domestic Workers Association. One of our partner orgs, I should have said this earlier, is Kanlungan Filipino Consortium, which is an amazing coalition of 6 different Filipino community organizations. Adrian himself has a network, and many of our group have their own different campaign groups. But one thing I have noticed is that in the Chinese catering sector, for example, which is where my family are based, there's no unionization. So the British Takeaways campaign, which is chaired by Ibrahim Douglas MP, doesn't have, as far as I'm aware, an East or Southeast Asian coalition partner. They have I think they have South Asian food in there, and they have kebabs, but not Chinese, Vietnamese, or other East and Southeast Asian restaurants. So I guess my quick question was, do you have any specific organizations that relate to or are dealing particularly with East and Southeast Asian issues, or they can be unions or organizations that have adapted over the course of COVID to work dedicatedly with East EC issues and concerns? And,
I mean, my involvement now is mainly through the borough-based community organizations, particularly the Chinese associations. I mean, you are right there in terms of in the private sector, East Asians and Southeast Asians are very scattered in all sorts of industry. Obviously, we have, very highly paid people in, say, the banking sector or the commercial sector, and also highly paid, and very highly regarded scientists and consultants in the NHS. And then at the other extreme, we have, people on less than minimum wage, in the catering industry. So it's very hard to actually, if you like, coordinate all these different groups. And I think it's very important, like they just strike up alliances and to hold industry bodies accountable to say, whether, and trade unions, if you're recruiting, are you recruiting and talking to East Asians and Southeast Asian workers, and are you making sure that these workers know their employment rights as well? There's still a lot of work to do, basically. That's what I'm saying after all these years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Joy next to speak, please?
Hi again. Sorry, there was lots of points that were being made that were going off the other point that I was going to make. It was just about some of the protests that were being held in across the pond in America. I know they're actual protests and they might not necessarily be used to the employment market, but what they're doing is they're pretty much starting to make a statement that represents the East and Southeast Asian communities here. And also in terms of campaigning and unifying East and Southeast Asian communities in Britain, which are, as stated by various people in this chat, that they are very much fragmented. Thankfully, we do have technology these days that is able to unify our communities, but in terms of how we're doing so, considering that the way that social media is quite congested, how we could actually market campaigns such as EVR and also other anti-EC racism campaigns successfully, so that the community can come together, even if it's a gradual process. I think that we would make sure that it's definitely there, considering what's been happening in other different countries, again, East and Southeast Asians. Over here, it's never spoken about, and in other countries, there's a stronger EC representation, whereas over here, we don't have as much as a strong EC representation. So imagine what is actually happening that has been said, from an unaddressed complaint in a supermarket to more institutionalized racism, like employment racism, and further than that, like violent anti-EC racism, which is also an unspoken topic, and which people really don't want to talk about. Anyway, so that's me and my points. I'm just going to have a cheddar thin at the moment.
Thank you so much, Joy. We have sorry, it's G Tan on your name there, who's raised their hand.
Jill, are you there?
Sorry, I was just typing something in the chat, so try to send it off before I talk. I hope it's gone out. Yeah, hope it hasn't. Oh, they disappeared. Okay, sorry. I'm Jill. My background is I was nursing and social care and community development. I've been working with the Chinese communities in London, yeah, and also outside London for many years. And together with JBUS and some other community colleagues, we have set up the Chinese National Healthy Living Center in Chinatown. It's still existing now, but I think struggle to survive. And also we set up Neom Chinese Association to help out Chinese Southeast Asian community to access health services and local services. We are still working on it. We haven't achieved our aim in getting a center set up in each of the London boroughs, so it's still an ongoing struggle. And then with the funding cut at the moment, quite a lot of centers are fighting for survival, even though there's a lot of needs in the community. And some of the center got funding, but just find it difficult to employ staff because most of the Chinese centers are run by older people. I think maybe because the wages is not very good, the work is very hard. Of course, the younger generation need to earn a living, so they won't come into it. But there is a demand for the younger people, younger blood to take over, you know, to carry on with the struggle and campaign, or to work with the communities to access services. And also with the different waves of community coming in from, used to be the Hong Kong Chinese older generation, now the catering businesses may be taking over now slowly by the Vietnamese and also the mainland Chinese that come over in the recent years, yeah. And with the COVID-related racism, the rise in it, we've been doing some work, and we just got some funding, still working on the logistics with the lottery funding with the training providers. So once all those settle, we will be looking for 4 groups in London community groups, either Chinese, Southeast Asian, Filipino, Thai, Japanese or Korean group, yeah, that will be for and 8 groups in England-wide to have 2 levels of work. One is to train staff or volunteers on hate crime and detailed training about how to support people to make a report, and also signpost them to the relevant supporting mechanism. And then on the other level will be also will recruit people in the community to be trained as trainers to deliver hate crimes training within the Chinese Southeast Asian communities across London and in England. The funding does not cover Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, unfortunately, yeah, but at least it's a start. And we have also applied for another lot of funding just for London, still working on it. So we hope to network with yourself. And also, I'm so impressed actually to hear all of you share your experience. And also Adrian and just now Becky and everybody share your experience of facing racism. I mean, 44 years ago when I came and do nursing, only one in the class, nobody wanted to talk to me. When I did psychiatry nursing, also the same. So things has not changed, but I don't think it will go away with the colonial past. It's more of ourselves, just like just now Adrian say and Becky say, it pushed us to be working harder to achieve something for ourselves and our community, and our contribution never stopped in terms of the society in England, yeah. So a lot of BME are in health and social care. There are so many Malaysian, Singaporean, Hong Kong nurses, now also Filipinos, yeah. Actually, our country trained those nurses, but they're serving in this country, and then most of them are actually working during the COVID period. Quite many also passed away, yeah. And then, so some of them in their 70s now, they're still working in the hospital because they're so short. Then most of the nurses have got very high standards. So, so in a way, the contribution to the society and economy is enormous. And then, I think at the moment, there's also a lot of self-employed people. And then in the catering line also, people are not getting the businesses and people are furloughed, yeah. So I know there are some of the Chinese businesses, they are self-employed, they're thinking how do they shift all their fruits and veg or things that they order. And maybe will be quite useful if we can all set up network information that we have from one community, we can pass on to the other and try to create some supportive network and some employment opportunity within the community to consume. Let's say this group, they have got loads of fruits that they couldn't sell, or they have got loads of vegetables and meat and all that. How we can still help it to circulate within the community. People from community buy it or set up certain scheme, so can still create some employment opportunity or entrepreneurship or some support, you know, from one to the other. And also within the Chinese Community Center, there is the older generation are crying out for support from the younger generation to help them out in setting up their website, you know, so that they can, people will know what services they are providing, and then can access the services, and also maybe teaching the older generation how to use the mobile phone, the new technology.
Jill,
you know.
Jill, if you could maybe wrap up in the next 20 seconds, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just really acknowledge all of you. Amazing bunch of young people coming together to do a lot of work together. Yeah, and in terms of just now, PAC, I think someone raised the issue about the catering side, because PAC has got a link with all the Chinese traders in Chinatown. So in terms of maybe forming union, forming support and all those, perhaps can discuss further and explore with the older generation and existing community, yeah? So I'd love to be in touch with all the communities here, yeah? And I put my email there already. So we like to recruit trainers and all this opportunity. We do give a little bit of funding, yeah, to do all those training, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so
and
much.
One more thing also, can I just say, actually there are a lot of funding opportunities around at the moment with COVID related, and a lot of charities are providing funding. I think we need to maybe set up some funding seminars so that the young and old can all tap into those resources to create opportunities in jobs, because I see quite a lot are in arts, artistic, and then performing arts and all the rest, yeah. So there are opportunities around, but see how we can link all this information up to help everybody to apply for more, to create more jobs within the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You said so much amazing stuff there, and as a community worker myself, you're a legend in our community circles. You know, and it's really great to have you here on our call, and you know,
no problem. Thank you very much. Also, because I study economics, so it's in my interest. Want to see also one more thing. Also, the Royal Docks at the moment, they're going through 25 years regeneration. 350 million pounds going to be put in to regenerate the whole Royal Docks. There are job opportunities, the entrepreneurship opportunity, and the ABP Asia Business Park had invested 1.7 billion in Royal Docks. One of the things I've been trying to campaign for is to set up a second Chinatown over there, or maybe also setting up things like, perhaps maybe Mei-Ling can get some advice from you, like a shelter home for the Chinese community and things like that. And also there are also requests for setting up food courts, some retail opportunity over there. So the Royal Docks, if any one of you looking for opportunities, please go on to the Royal Docks website, yeah, and then look at all the meetings that they're having. They have appointed economic staff just to deal with economic side, yeah. So far we have been campaigning for them to involve the communities, and they're doing a lot of that, yeah. There's a lot of artistic opportunities out there as well. So that the Chinese Southeast Asian community group, please tap into it, yeah. And also one more thing is,
Jill, sorry, I have to cut you off. I'm so sorry, but if you can just put it in the group chat.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So those of you who don't know, the Royal Docks is in Newham. So Newham is a borough in East London that will see huge, tremendous change, not only demographically, but as Jill was talking about, regeneration-wise over the next few decades. So definitely keep an eye out on Newham. I'm also headed to Newham to work, so I definitely want to link up with you, Jill. Just wanted to take this opportunity. I don't know where Jacqueline's gone, but I can't see the chat. But yes, we have a Facebook group called End the Virus of Racism on Facebook. So if you use Facebook, please join. And as Jacqueline was saying earlier, follow all our social media. I think there's just so many groups, and it's really wonderful. And it's good that we have different sort of pockets of the internet and pockets of community centres to sort of work on these issues. But as Jill was saying, we need to come together. And yeah, I think hopefully strengthening these connections will mean that the web can sort of grow, and we're only a few degrees of separation from each other anyway. So yeah, just definitely connect with our Facebook group and other groups. And yeah, wanted to kind of move the discussion on, but I don't have the list. Mariko, do you have the list of who's raised their hand?
Yeah, so we have Anthony, we have Kristen, and Enzi, if I pronounce it.
Oh, sorry, just wanted to say to anyone who's not spoken, or in terms of like the going back to the mission, just wanted to throw out some more prompts out there. So you know, it talks about childcare places to support women in work. There's also areas of focus about sort of industry training and lifelong learning. So I mean, that could not only just include upskilling, like Mei-Ling was talking about, into tech and green jobs, but also in terms of apprenticeships into, like, I don't know, for example, the voluntary and community sector, which, as we all know, is sorely needed and yet has been defunded, you know, over the years. So just throwing out those prompts out there for anyone who's not spoken, so that you can think about it, and handing over to the next person.
Anthony, would you like to speak?
Yeah, hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pick up on a point that I think Becky and Joy made earlier about solving unemployment and how it's going to disproportionately affect a lot of people of East Asian and Southeast Asian descent. I think a really good option, and just for a bit of background, I work at Sky and I'm a part of their BAM group as well as the multicultural group focusing on obviously a lot of issues that we have in kind of corporate and stuff. And a big thing that I definitely think kind of not only us as a ethnic minority group will focus on, but kind of everyone has been advocating is blind recruitment. And I think as we work through COVID, I think that's going to be a big obstacle, unfortunately, for a lot of people of Chinese and other East Asian groups, Southeast Asian groups, in that, you know, when you apply for a job, a lot of people will look at your name, maybe where you've been working, your heritage will probably be quite obvious from a lot of those details. And speaking personally, I just recently moved back from China, from Beijing in January, just before COVID exploded. And I found it extremely difficult to get any kind of engagement with any kind of companies when applying for jobs. And if I did, the only question I would always get, despite filling out my nationality as being British, was always, sorry, we don't offer work visas. Sorry, are you British? We don't, you know, do you need sponsorship? That was the only question I would get. Normally that would be followed with, you know, radio silence. No one would come back to me, and they would just assume that I'm Chinese by nationality as well as heritage, and that would be the end of it. So I really think blind recruitment is a great way for us as a group to avoid some of those pitfalls that we're inevitably going to be facing post-COVID with a lot of the hate crimes and stuff. I think a lot of companies are going to be full of unconscious and sometimes conscious bias towards us as a group. And I think that's something that we should definitely be considering. And it's something that I'm pushing a lot internally. Obviously, it's quite hard with, I'm sure you guys will be able to guess, Sky is quite a male, white, middle-aged kind of demographic of a workforce. So it's really, really hard to push these kind of ideas. You know, we've basically also been, you know, put off using phrases like white privilege or talking about things like that for the want of not hurting their feelings. I can see Daniel York Low, by the way, at the top of the screen. He's a bit of an inspiration to me to be a pretty militant person when it comes to a lot of these kind of things. And I think it's something that all of us should kind of, maybe not to Daniel's extreme level sometimes following on Twitter, but sometimes I think we should definitely fight that. And I think we have a lot of power once we get in the door at corporations like my own, like Sky, like a lot of other ones, in that, you know, if we're outspoken and we're fighting for what we know is something that's right, it's going to be pretty hard for them to move us and get us out. It's not going to be as easy if you're on a permanent contract working at a big corporation like that with all the labor laws that are protecting us, for them to kick us out for despicable behavior. So I think it's something that we should definitely be pushing for as well. And I think it's quite fair, and I think we'll get a lot of support from other Black ethnic minority, South Asian minority groups when it comes to the blind recruitment, because it will also be affecting them, obviously. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Can I add something really quickly on that?
If it's really quick, Daniel.
Yeah, sorry, sure. So just on that, what that made me think, and one thing I'd like to propose is the use of data, actually. So whether we can really use data to our advantage. There's a lot of studies out there now around discrimination, and even what Anthony was just saying about blind recruitment and stuff like that. There's a study that shows that if you whiten your name, i.e., you know, get rid of your Asian first name, Asian second name, you've got 10% higher likelihood of being invited to interview. That was a US study. So, you know, and there's a lot of research out there, and we're engaging in that research. So I'm just trying to think how we can use that type of research that goes beyond kind of the anecdotal evidence to really show it in a scientific way to back up what we're proposing as part of this.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Anthony, for what you've said there. I definitely understand the points that you've made, and I know that I've got a very European name, and often when I come to interviews, the first question I get asked is, where are you from? And Also, getting into an Uber, people will question if my name is Jacqueline because I look Chinese. So that's something that people do definitely question with me whenever they're surprised by my Asianness when they see my face. But yeah, so I definitely resonate with a lot of what you're saying there. I think the next person we have to speak is Kirsten. If you want to start talking, thank you.
Hiya, my name is Kirsten. I am Scottish and Chinese. It's really lovely to meet you all. I work in the arts. It's really interesting to hear everyone's opinions and stories, and however horrific they are. Just going back to your slide, I think what's really called for here is full transparency. I think there needs to be not only support, but data collection is needed. And when it says skills and training to support Londoners into new jobs, that's also to do with who's recruiting as well, needs to have that training. As you were saying, it's very difficult for people in our community to say anything. There's no process, there's no policies in place. I think that would really benefit our community, and also to acknowledge that our community is diverse. We have very different cultural beliefs, different languages, different skills. And lastly, if there was support as well, someone was saying how we are a passive community, just thinking about what we've dealt with the racism with COVID, but also just what's been happening in Asia with our families and friends at home. I'm from Hong Kong, so obviously I'm feeling it particularly with government sanctions and yeah, so I think not only as a community, we are powerful, we are very talented, we are capable, but we clearly need support at this very key time, not only in the UK, but also from our experiences at home as well.
Thank you, Kirsten. My father's side are Hong Konger as well, so I completely echo what you're saying around the fear and insecurity going on there. And moving on to the next speaker, is it Kimmy?
Me, yeah.
Hi there, I'm Kimmy. I just wanted to point out that there's such a thing for best practice in employment called positive action. So what it is basically transparency, and it's all about placing job adverts to target particular groups, to increase the number of applicants from that group, and just to identify gaps in different sectors. But that's how can you actually implement that if there isn't proper ethnic monitoring, especially with terminologies. They're not properly, they don't serve us at all unless you're Chinese. So that really needs to be pushed for ethnic monitoring in order to properly implement positive action in all these various sectors, in NHS and all sorts, especially public sectors as well, because they claim to be going by the public sector equality duty, and it is actually best practice for them to actually employ positive action, but it's not. There are no evidence of that. And yeah, we definitely need to push for that, and full transparency, data collection, and proper terminologies for ethnic monitoring.
And Kimmy, do you want to talk a little bit about your work as well with ESAS?
Yeah, my name's Kimmy Jolly. I'm one of the founders of ESAS. We're called East and Southeast Asian Scotland. So we only just opened in June actually. So what we do is at the moment, we're just currently offering support group meetings for people who have been victims of racism. And also we do advocacy work with unions, where all these different BAME organizations come together to talk about issues. And then we put forward recommendations to policymakers. So yeah, that's what we're doing at the moment. And yeah, we're currently looking for volunteers as well, because there aren't very many in Scotland that are vocal about these issues, unfortunately. So if anybody wants to get in touch or recommend us, that would be great.
Thank you, Kimmy. And it would be amazing to build on those conversations about positive action in the UK, especially given your experience in Scotland. So we're lucky to have you in End the Virus of Racism, I think. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we have Angie speaking again, if you want to start talking.
Yeah, sure. I don't think I introduced myself the first time around. I'm Enchi Chang. I work in the arts. I'm an actor and writer and a few other things. I thought some of the points raised earlier about unionization and sort of like building more of a community and I guess solidarity within like the BC community is super important. And I think especially after COVID, it could be useful if we could sort of take things into sort of a more physical realm. For those of you, I don't know if anyone sort of like grew up in North London or knows, but in North London there was a place called Oriental City that I used to go to a lot growing up. It was like a big community hub. It was like a sort of like a combination of like a community center, like an Asian supermarket, and I guess that ends in like almost like a youth center. And unfortunately, that place was shut down about 10 years ago, I think. But if we could, you know, build like potentially like even if it was just renting out a place like that to act as a sort of community center for people in order to bring people together, host events, I guess like engender and like further connections between like the older generation, the younger people, reaching out to people, holding at like initiatives and stuff. I think it could be a really powerful way of like bringing the community together, especially since I think given like the racism against us due to coronavirus, I feel like to some extent it has caused further divisions of our community. Xenophobia is like a really big issue. At the end of the day, while Chinese people are very sort of overrepresented in the media, hypervisibility isn't necessarily a good thing since the majority of it is very negative. And I do feel like there is quite a large stigma surrounding I guess, I mean, there's a lot of like, there's a lot of divisions within our own communities and within like, and I sort of feel like initiatives like this could maybe help to engage further solidarity and sort of like bring us closer together, really. I think I had one other point, but I can't remember at the moment, so I'm going to stop speaking. I just want to say like, thank you, by the way. This is a really, really good initiative and I've been hearing some really, really amazing ideas tonight and it's given me a lot of, like I guess I've restored faith in our community. Oh, sorry, I had one last point. Accountability is really important and we really do need to start holding both like the institutions which oppress us accountable. However, I do think we should also work at holding members of our own community accountable as well. The model minority myth is something that really hurts us, particularly any Asians who don't fit the incredibly narrow roles prescribed to us by the myth. Particularly sort of like working class Asians, neurodivergent Asians, like disabled people, LGBTQ people, etc., etc. So really, it is like very, very few people who actually benefit from the model minority myth, and yet there are many sort of public figures and sort of like quite people with a platform within our community who do like intentionally or not do things to upload the model minority to uphold the model minority myth. And I do think this is something that we should really start working toward dismantling. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Unshi. And yeah, there's in the course of like thinking about what we want to the process of organization building and the process of movement building, we have had some of these conversations and some of them are like yet to be had. We're having, you know, one right now, which is really valuable. So yeah, there's, you know, we've had some struggles, you know, getting funding because our organization, it is, there are so many data gaps, there are so many statistical kind of like unreliabilities that we have to sort of build the case for why we're needed, and we also have to build ourselves at the same time. So it's like building a house and trying to move house at the same time. So, you know, when people ask me to describe what is EVR, I say that we're a campaign group, but we're also like trying to build a movement. And while, you know, anti-racism and intersectionality and therefore education and advocacy is at the heart of all we do, yeah, you're absolutely right. There needs to be sort of places as well, like community building as well, in which one organisation can't do alone, but with others. So I think Grace Lee Boggs said, building community is to the collective what spirituality is to the individual. So, you know, in the course of sort of movement building and organisation building, it's so important that we touch in with each other and just sort of like flesh out these visions. So yeah, thank you for that. I see that Becky's got her hand up, so I think we'll go to you next. However, before that, well, actually, let's go to Becky first, really quickly, and then I just wanted to divert the discussion to, or not divert, but like bring it back to the mission and ask some key questions. But Becky, if you really quickly.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be really quick. It's just really what the previous person was saying, and also just highlighting the fact that people that have a big platform to speak their opinions can really impact people's thoughts. Like when Trump called coronavirus the Chinese virus, and despite lots of people disagreeing with his beliefs, it did cause a huge uproar of anti-Asian racism in society. And this actually isn't the first time that a virus has had a connotation with a country, because in 1968, the flu then was called the Hong Kong flu, or it was also called the Mao flu. But when there was the swine flu, which was detected in Mexico, it wasn't necessarily called the Mexican flu. So I think, just to wrap it up, I just think it's really important that if we do have a platform where there are people connecting with us, that we use it in a positive way to educate people about Southeast and East Asian communities, and that we don't eat bats and not all of us eat dogs and these other racist derogatory terms that have been caused to us because of everything that's happened with the virus.
Thank you so much, Becky. Yeah, I think a missing element of sometimes with community organizations is the political advocacy. So as a group, we have described ourselves as cross-party, but at the same time, we are very critical of the parties, and we're very much engaged and active, and we want to confront some of these cleavages and divisions in our communities, like, you know, the models minority myth, this was mentioned earlier. And yeah, there's just a lot of, I don't want to call it catching up, but silences to speak back to, and moving and shaking to do. So yeah, that's what we, the change that we hope to be bringing. So just wanted to, it's been a great discussion so far, and so we've got 10 minutes left. So I guess we can take a rain check in a little bit, you know, how people are feeling. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken that wants to speak? Do we want to keep going? But as promised before, just to bring it back to the question. So remember, the mission is that no Londoner, particularly those disproportionately affected by the pandemic or Brexit, is left without access to education, training, or a job opportunity. Mariko's made a really great point earlier that I do want us to emphasize about how immigration policies and how the hostile environment affects our communities is missing from that mission. But just to ask some more sort of the core questions that I would like us to focus on in these at least officially last few minutes. What kind of, we've spoken about what actions and what interventions might have the most impact, like unionization and advocacy, and we've spoken about what's missing, but how will we know with the mission Good Work for All Londoners when we have succeeded? So I just wanted to throw that out to the floor. What does good work for all Londoners, including for East and Southeast Asian communities, what does that look like? is there anyone who hasn't spoken, or maybe someone like Miling or OG who might have, sorry to put you on the spot, but as more experienced activists, maybe you've got something.
Oh, not an answer to the question, but I am about to post something on here. If we covered the struggle of the international student versus the home fees, especially if there are migrant Southeast and East Asians who would like to continue studying in the UK. However, you know, that's part of the hostile environment to migrants, that they are still qualified as an international student, so they have to pay the fees. I'm not really sure if we were able to cover this, because this impact young Southeast and East Asians. Like, for example, my experience, I am an asylum seeker. I'm here, a political asylum seeker here in the UK. So asylum seekers are not really are considered as international students. So and then there's also several limitations for asylum seekers to access certain privileges when entering a university. So I'm not really sure if we were able to cover this.
Thank you, OG, for that contribution. Just wanted to direct everyone to our Twitter page, End Racism Virus, because we have, we should have retweeted someone called Ameline Wang. So Ameline is Indonesian and is working on a PhD regarding hate crimes and microaggressions towards Southeast Asian communities in the UK. So Ameline's put out a survey and has been getting good feedback, but there are some communities that are really hard to reach. So definitely that is one piece of work that's happening. But yeah, that's a really good point, and if anyone else wants to pick that up, please feel free. I might have to pick on someone.
Can I come in?
Do you want to go again?
Mei-Ling, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other issue is looking at the short and medium term future of the economic health of London. I mean, we've got the perfect storm, haven't we? We've got a pandemic and Brexit. And I think what's important is to make sure that we already have a high proportion of our communities who are, if you like, unemployed or underemployed. We have some fantastic, talented people. And because of institutional racism in the employment world, people are not being given the opportunities, to actually, one, get the jobs and in the end help London recover and London grow and to return to be a dynamic, vibrant, cosmopolitan city. And it's recognizing that the talent is out there, the skills are out there amongst our communities for all sorts of sectors. And I think it's to make sure that, again, the other alliances, and to make sure that our voices are heard, the alliances we need to make is with the employers and employer organizations through the CBI, the Chambers of Commerce, to say, look, the government's got a really unfair immigration policy. And because of Brexit, we're going to need highly skilled people still, but we say that the talent pool is already in London amongst our communities, and make sure that our employers know about it. And I think it's working with the employer organizations to make sure that they are doing targeted recruitment and using positive action, rather than this call. Yes, Britain will still need immigration in terms of to attract talent from abroad. But I think the issue is we have homegrown talent. first, second, third generation talent amongst our communities now, and they are underemployed, so I think it's how we need to make sure that employers know and understand the talent pool is already out there.
Great points, Mei-Ling, about unemployment and underemployment as well, which touch back onto the issue of training and personal development, as well as training for senior leadership in organisations. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak? And also, we have 5 minutes to go. So, how are people?
Jill would like to speak.
Jill wants to speak. Okay.
Okay, then thank you. Just quickly, in terms of maybe job opportunities, the Heritage Lottery funding, we have campaign, and they say for the next 4 years they like to invest more in heritage projects in Newham, because at the moment the Newham Chinese Association doing a oral history project to record 20 oral history and the contribution to the local economy. So there's still a lot more opportunity. People are looking for it. And the Eastside Community Heritage Center, they were the partners to help out to apply for funding. So any groups wanting to do some partnership work with them and all that, let me know. I may be able to put you all in touch, because there are a lot of artists around. So there's a lot of opportunity, and then if anybody interested to actually set up a film company, casting company for BME, for Chinese Southeast Asian BME community, there is opportunities as well, I can put you in touch with some contact then, Okay, well done everyone. Just keep up with all the excellent work. It's so good to work with younger generation, because we have been, these past years, been working so much with the older generation, try to help them to access services. It's so invigorating to be working with the younger generation as well. So hopefully the two groups, we will break the intergeneration gap, and all communities link up together and get more funding out there. Then maybe run some seminar as to how to access all these for everyone. Can organize some seminar, get maybe the Mayor of London to give some funding to run some free seminars for everybody. Well done all.
Thank you, Jill. And it's important that we don't just do the work ourselves, but that we request and demand that government fund this, because this is their responsibility.
We pay tax, we pay NI, we pay business rate, so we need to be going out for it, but we have to learn how to do it and how to apply for funding as well. So those skills could be maybe requesting from some expert help from the mayor's office, something like that,
And for example of what that could look like is petitioning for a certain number of bursaries for, say, what's an underrepresented field? For example, bursaries in tech or bursaries in politics. And getting the government to put funding there, and that money is reserved for East and Southeast Asian people, for example.
That's right. We need to link up more. Plus, also we do meet with the Metropolitan Police on a fortnightly basis now to talk about the anti-racism, because the BME Southeast Asian Police also facing a lot of racism themselves, institutional and also on the job, more on the job as well now. So on a weekly basis, on a Tuesday, if any one of the groups are interested, you are all welcome to join, because we wanted more Chinese Southeast Asian community groups to join that meeting. It's on a Tuesday at 12:30 for an hour. So anybody interested, email me on gftan4@gmail.com. I put it in already, then we will link you in with Abdul, the police officer, to invite you in. So your group should be all represented on, because we need more. Thank you. And the police officer also produce a video on hate crime in all the different languages. They themselves volunteer using their Thai or Filipino, Cantonese, Vietnamese. So there's still more to be done.
Thank you, Jill. I just wanted to say that it's really great what you're doing, and also in terms of the racism and hate crime. And also earlier, I just read on your chat box that you're providing a training on employment rights and the job situations for people in different languages. It's just linked to what I mentioned earlier, and also to do with what it was raised by me about, there's already talent around in the first and second, third generations, and also people who are here as asylum seekers or refugees who are not allowed to work, but they have the talent, and also the people with no recourse to public funds attached. It's not just about job seekers allowance, but these people don't have opportunity to get training or being informed about jobs that are available. So that's some things that really, it's to do with the central government, but I would like to sort of urge the Mayor of London to support us on this campaign, and also to have funding for organizations like us, any other groups, to provide this needed training and support.
Thank you, Mariko, for that. And it's very important to emphasize in our communities there's so many different relationships with the police. So there are local councils, local community groups maybe are working cooperatively with the police, and then we also have other groups in the movement ecosystem who are have much more fractured relationships with the police and don't want to work with them. And it's important to emphasize that we're here for the whole breadth of that community. The whole breadth of our communities, and given the structural racism within the police, and that the police to some people represent as well.
This group that we are working with, we are trying to improve the practices within the police force to support the BME police office, police and police staff, to change practices and then to fight this institutional racism as well. So to develop some good practices so that they can also influence police force outside London as well. Let's say in Southampton, those Chinese students who were beaten up and they didn't get much help, and they came to this group, and then the BME police group here also trying to help them out in terms of getting more support over there in Southampton. So we are trying to through this group to bring in more better practices to influence it across the whole UK. Yeah. So, but the more we look at it, the more we get them changed, because some of the senior came, but the BME staff, police staff, they needed support as well. So they bring the community in together. Yeah. And just now the other lady talked about about the people who don't have recourse of public fund. The mayor's office has got a very good volunteering scheme, so maybe if can tap them onto it, then they can also learn some skill, because then after that, once they get the status sorted out, they already have some working experience. And most of the community groups are crying out for volunteers, so if they can tap on to the voluntary sector and all those volunteer scheme, then it's somewhere for them to get some support and comfort. And a lot of the church group also, they also look for volunteers as well. So then they also can be tapped on to food bank and all the rest.
Joe, what I'm thinking is that they should have put you on the London Recovery Board, and I'm not joking.
Really?
Because you are an employment powerhouse, and this is the kind of expertise and just deep-dived community knowledge that the Mayor of London are missing at the moment. So
put me in touch with the relevant people. If you attend any meeting, I don't mind, because I 40 years over working in England, being a trained nurse and also social worker, and I used to manage children's center given £1 million. And I managed 35 staff, from psychologists to breastfeeding midwife, and I recruit a lot of bilingual staff. I make sure I reflect the population, so bilingual Bengali staff, bilingual Somali staff, bilingual Chinese staff. So we train all the parents from poor background, because the children's center is to target the poorest of the poor, and then we got them into training, into job. We even got the women to be trained in doing plumbing, so they can plumb for each other, save money. So getting them all into training, to set up businesses as well within the community. So definitely I've got lots of ideas and never stop developing a project. I'm also a film extra. I filmed with Bernadette Cumberbatch twice, and I was in The Crown too. So the Queen's expert talked to me about how to behave. I was acting as the Sultana of Perak, so in The Crown too, So all those famous directors and actresses, they have their name written in Chinese by me, including Jason Statham. I was his Cantonese coach in the film Hummingbird.
I don't know. I don't think anyone can follow that, but we are now. Thank you so much, Jill. By the way, so we are now 5 minutes past the event finish time. I just wanted to ask if there's any kind of final points, or what I could do is end on a sort of a prompt and get everyone to say a sentence. But before I do that, I should probably ask Mariko and Jacqueline, do you have anything to say?
I've noticed that there are a few people who work in the arts sector here, and if they're actors, writers, directors, but I was just wondering if anyone wanted to speak about their experience during this pandemic, about the kind of response or support from the government within the arts sector, especially for this community. I know that we've got quite a few people who work in this sector. So I personally, I used to work in production. I was furloughed, and now I'm no longer working in production, and I've managed to find a job, but that's just using a different skill set that I have. So I know a lot of friends of mine no longer have to start new career.
Should I say something?
So just wondering if anyone, yeah.
Yeah, I won't go on too long because it's over the time and everything. Yeah, I mean, basically the government are killing our industry. That's just a fact. I'm looking around. I know Jamie Zubairi knows this very well. There's a few of us, I think, are very aware of this. And we have to, I mean, and especially as Southeast Asian artists, we're very, very marginalized. I would say, this whole thing is about work and employment. And one of the things that I think where, the areas I think East and Southeast Asians do struggle in Britain is in what I would call kind of visual media, high profile positions. And that's not because of lack of talent. There's plenty of talent around. It's just because we just, haven't been able to shatter that bamboo ceiling at all. But I mean, there is a thing where I think we have to work very hard to kind of support each other through this. And I mean, there's a company I run with Jennifer, basically, Aviv, Moongate, and we basically applied for one lot of Arts Council emergency funding to do We Are Not Virus, which was a collection of 10 short pieces. And we're looking to kind of actively harness kind of Arts Council money to create opportunities for British East and Southeast Asian actors, artists, writers, everything under the sun, really. We're trying to do this as much as we can, but I mean, it does need us all to kind of come together across and across different. What's really nice about this is it's very diverse in terms of our backgrounds, and I think that's the way we really have to work it. Because if we get, I mean, it's tended to be a very, very Chinese paradigm, and which is, I'm half Chinese myself, but I do think we have to be much, much more inclusive and much, much more, much more focused on equality. I think equality of voice, equality of representation. But this has been great. Thank you for doing this.
Does anyone else want to respond to Jacqueline's point about arts? Or if not, I can bring in Viv, who's joined us, who can tell us more about what she's up to with her campaign group. So yeah, well, so happy to see you, Viv.
Hi everyone. I'm so sorry that I've joined the end of the call. We've just finished a call with a separate thing. So I'm Viv, everyone. Nice to meet you. We started, I don't know how much everyone knows about kind of what we've been doing, but we are a group called Be Seen, which we're launching in the next 2 weeks. We are basically Britain's East and Southeast Asian network, and what we're trying to do is really counteract what the media portrayals are doing in terms of kind of portraying ESCA people in COVID related media. So I started this petition 6 weeks ago, and it's gained around 14,000 signatures in terms of asking the media, demanding the media to stop representing us in this way, because we're just completely sick of it and it's having a detrimental effect on our communities. And since the petition launch, we've had it raised in Parliament by Sarah Owen, a British East Asian MP, Labour MP for Luton. So we are waiting for a meeting to be secured with Parliament. Sarah has been pushing it, but apparently she has been met with "this is not my department" type of rhetoric. So we are really trying hard to put pressure on the government to do something about it. And in the meantime, launch this media space, which will be a website which will effectively try to counteract all the rubbish things that we're seeing in the media, and be a positive space to highlight people across the breadth of ESEA representation. So we're really looking to try to work with as many different people as possible and bring a very positive light to what is at the moment a very kind of a dark time for a lot of people right now in our communities.
Thank you so much for that, Viv. I feel you do a lot. Did you miss something in that long? Do you want to talk about Be Influence as well?
Oh yeah, well, my job. Okay, yeah. So I own a marketing agency. So specifically, Influencer Marketing Agency. We're based in Manchester, and we are effectively an agency that want to represent people who care about something. So we are an agency that stands for inclusivity. We represent influencers who stand for change. Our campaigns that we work on with our clients, it's all about how can we bring in everyone into the conversation as much as we can. So every single campaign that we work on, every marketing campaign has some form of element where it's basically trying to be as inclusive and caring about something as much as we can. Because the influencer marketing industry has a bad rep. Everyone thinks it's just Love Island people posting photos of them promoting teeth whitening products or diet shakes or something, and actually there's lots of talented creators out there who are doing really good things and speaking up for change. So we're really trying to shake the industry in terms of the perception of the overall industry and bring in more inclusivity within the influencer marketing industry as well.
Thank you so much, Viv. So yeah, I think what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling is it's good to kind of have a debrief and a wrap up of the session. So just to catch everyone up, because I know not everyone here was here at the beginning. So what we were doing is we were looking at the mission, Good Work for All Londoners, and just to read it out again. So by the way, the mission is just basically one of 8 that the London Recovery Board will be using in terms of informing its direction, its strategy of the London recovery going forwards. So this mission that we looked at is basically that no Londoner, particularly those disproportionately affected by the pandemic or Brexit, is left without access to education, training, or a job opportunity. So we've talked about loads of things, and Mariko and Jacqueline, feel free to jump in if I miss something, but we've spoken about how our communities are concentrated in different sectors, some more heavily than others, such as catering, and we've also spoken about how also fragmented our communities are, how they're scattered in their different sectors, and also crucially not organised and not unionised. So that is something to look into going forwards, not only about community building, but also someone mentioned protests, and a lot of you have mentioned about positive action, for example, and working on initiatives, and not only pointing out job opportunities, but also like creating kind of spaces where we not only gain more literacy in telling articulating these narratives about underrepresentation or even overrepresentation. So Viv's campaign with the other 5 or 6 women. I'm sorry, I can't remember. You feel like such a big group to me, and it's it's all about how, for example, to quote Daniel, you know, the only time that Asians, East and Southeast Asians, have been overrepresented in the media is now, type of thing. You know, when we have COVID, you see more of our faces, but it's not for anything positive. It's to tie us and stigmatize us to coronavirus. We've spoken about like the hostile environment and immigration, and you know, our communities divided relationships with the police, and I think we've all kind of made contact with each other, and hopefully we can you know, organize more going forwards, not only online, but you know, we didn't really talk about this so much, but there's an issue of digital exclusion in our communities, as well as people who don't speak English, or people who do speak English but don't feel kind of acculturated in for example, like English speaking jobs. For example, I know from experience, you know, like catering workers, they lack the sort of the organizational backgrounds in terms of they don't maybe they're not used to sort of like applying with CVs, for example, and so when they when that sector, which is quite depleted, when they have to transition into other areas of work, it might mean that they have to stay in catering, which is a sector that has a lot of labor exploitation. It has a lot of you know, there's a lack of unionization. And so there's issues there in terms of like training such workers up so that they can work in other fields and be eligible for furlough, because a lot of frontline workers during the pandemic had no recourse to public funds, as Mariko and others have been describing. And yeah, so I mean, it's a long, you know, conversation that we've had, and what we will do is we will write up a report and we will share that. I think we'll be able to share that with you guys, or if not, then we'll publish it in some form. But it's been really great to hold this conversation with you all. So just thank you all for joining. We have another conversation tomorrow if you want to join us too, and that will be on a strong civil society. So that will be extending on today's conversation about coalition building, community wealth building, and you know, strengthening our democracy. So I will hand over to Mariko and Jacqueline if you've got anything that I've missed, or if not, then I think we should call it a night. So, but thank you everyone.
Well done. Thank you very much. Thank you for excellent hosting and for bringing everybody together. You all are very empowering and inspiring. So have a lovely weekend, every one of you. Yeah. Hope to keep in touch and circulate and share info. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Keep positive,
Salamat.
everybody. Keep strong. Keep positive.
Salamat.
Bye-bye. Salamat. Malam. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
If anyone hasn't responded to tomorrow's session and they would like to continue the conversation, please feel free to email us at endracismvirus@gmail.com, and we can add you onto the list for tomorrow's session.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.